Hello once again to our listeners. Welcome back to the 10th episode of the IVSA Kelantan podcast show. In this episode, we'll be talking about how to save the Malayan tiger, a three-step guide. To discuss this topic with us today, we have Dr. Wan Nor Fitri. Dr. Fitri is a senior lecturer in interior genealogy and cytogenetics at the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, Universiti Putra Malaysia since 2019. He was also part of the Pro Tem Steering Committee in the Veterinary Specialist Interest Group, or known as WETSIG. Dr. Fitri was also a fellow MAVP and Young Expert Reference for the Malaysian Association of Veterinary Pathologists, as well as a panel speaker for the Department of Arts or Perhilitan in their expert lecture series. Dr. Fitri is a recipient of the prestigious Merdeka Award Travel Grant in 2021 for his work in stem cell and cloning in wildlife reproduction. Welcome, Dr. Fitri.
Thanks, Ashley. Hi. Very nice to meet all of you guys, I suppose. All right. My name is Fitri. As already introduced, I lecture students from Doctor of Veterinary Medicine course in Universiti Putra Malaysia. Range from climate change to livestock to genealogy, which what I specialize in. Okay.
Okay, hello, doctor.
Hi, Roberto.
Hi. So I will proceed next with the questions. So the first one is, if we may ask doctor, what sparked your interest in tackling this issue regarding the conservation of the Malayan tigers?
I think what truly get me started in Malayan tiger conservation was when I was applying for the Merdeka Award grant, and we were pitching for a work to be done in then what was still extant Sumatran rhino, along the line of work of cell cloning and stem cell on Sumatran rhino. And then I didn't get the Merdeka Award in 2019, and I got it in 2021, and that was why I slowly encroached into the work in Malayan tiger, basic retrospective work, and we've come to realize that Malayan tiger, in captivity at least, seems to have a challenge in breeding, and that was where in 2021 I start to apply for the work in Malayan tiger instead, because Sumatran tiger is not in Malaysia anymore. It's gone extinct. So I think this, so to say, the spark or the interest has always been around the reproduction of animal. So knowing that there is a challenge, there is an issue with Malayan tiger breeding, we realize that it's something that we need to combat and something that we need to address. Because I believe that if the reproduction of the animal fail, which we've experienced in the Sumatran rhino, eventually then we could not produce any more Malayan tiger babies, and that would eventually be the end of a species population per se. Because I keep on thinking, if I were to tell a layman how a species could survive, then I always think about the macaque, because it's something that is quite abundant. And when you see macaque, especially those that encroach the urban area, you can see a lot of adult macaque, but at the same time you can see young juvenile macaques at the same time, showing that they have no problem in breeding. Similarly, if you try to see that in public health point of view, if you're familiar with dengue fever, which are brought by the mosquito Aedes, they always emphasize and you need to destroy the breeding ground, because if they can breed, they can multiply, and then they can give you those diseases. So I think in a population per se, breeding, I suppose, remain a very important key for survival of a species. So that's why I suppose we embark on investigating the reproductive viability of the Malayan tiger, knowing that the population of the Malayan tiger is in critical number now at 150. I think we need to do something a bit different, a little bit more aggressive in order for us to beat this extinction crisis.
Okay, Doctor.
Okay, that's all.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. And you said that the number are getting decreasing. So, what, in your opinion, what do you think about the main causes of their numbers decreasing actually?
Right. So this is where I think, again, if I were to wrap uh, my understanding around the topic of the Malayan tiger population crisis, is that we should try to narrow it down to three top differential diagnoses, so to say, if you want to emphasize and prioritize. So the first one being, which I've addressed slightly, is on the reproduction. So I think most of us will have to agree to a certain point, if not, the rate of reproduction or the rate of birth need to be higher than the rate of mortality. Otherwise, then there will be no more Malayan tiger. So reproduction is one of the important key for the survival of the species. Whether you do it naturally, whether you do it artificially, I think we can all agree that we need more tiger birth, because evidence now in captivity is not looking so good, and evidence from the wild, I think, is quite scarce. I think we need more data on that. Although there are claims that there are tiger litters, there are tiger babies, tiger cubs that are being observed in the camera traps, but I think it's quite scarce, and I think you can't be so sure until you get all the representative data. And I think it's suffice to say that we need to have more study on that sense to actually evaluate whether we have enough tiger birth in the wild or not. But in captivity, that's as clear as it gets, crystal clear that we need more tiger birth. So on the second note, after breeding, is the habitat of tiger, which requires protection, which requires enrichment. And this brings me to the favorite prey animal of the tiger, which is the sambar deer. I think there was a paper in 2010 which they did camera trap study, and even from the National Tiger Survey, I think if they just look at the data or look at the camera trap quite briskly, the number of sambar deer is even more worrying than the Malayan tiger. So I think that is something that we should look into in beefing up or in improving the population of the sambar deer, which is the main prey for the tiger. So habitat and its food falls on the second point. And I think the third point after that, after what they eat, after they breed enough, environment, I think habitat protection falls under that as well. But it's something that we have to keep, or we have to maintain the protection or the poaching of tiger. It's something that we need to actually keep to minimal or keep it to zero, because poaching is a serious issue to Malayan tiger. I'm quite hesitating in listing my third point, but I think there is a solid ground of concern because there's a case in India, if I'm not mistaken, that even after conservation have been maintained for 10 to 15 years, it only take a few nights of hunting or a few weeks, days or weeks, if not most, which could wipe out the entire population of tiger in India, which actually happened lah. So they did like conservation of 20 to 30 years of the Indian tiger, then they somehow have an issue with protection of the land. So it's something like totally protected land or totally protected forest, that in between they decided like maybe we should open it a bit in terms of those protection, and instantly I think almost 2 weeks they lost the entire population that they have conserved for 30 years. So I think the same goes with Malayan tiger. You cannot discount, although now you're seeing articles, you're seeing newspapers articles saying that poaching in Royal Belum, for example, has dwindled down to zero. So that's great, but I think reaching zero is not the main goal. It's maintaining zero poaching is the ultimate goal, which is something that we need to maintain. So I think that's about it. Environment, breeding, and poaching has to all come together in all of the three trifecta that I've suggested in protecting the Malayan tiger.
Okay, so doctor, we talk about the three main reasons their numbers are declining. So I'd like to go to our topic, which is quite interesting. So our topic is three steps, a three-step guide to save our Malayan tigers or to increase their numbers. So I would like to know what these three steps are.
Right. So the three steps is similar to the three reasons why they might have gone extinct or the number might have declined. So increasing the number of tiger birth should be prioritized, because as of now, if the number is very low, it makes total sense to increase it. Second is making sure that the habitat is stable enough or rich enough to maintain the tiger population. Because if you somehow manage to, for example, double or increase the number of tiger population, but if the habitat cannot maintain the tiger, then the tiger will encroach human habitat, which will create human tiger conflict, which is something that we would be wanting to reduce or want to prevent in the first place. And the third one is we have to ensure the protection of tiger in its habitat and all its surrounding area be maintained. So that has to come with a very strong political will, because it requires a lot of resources to actually monitor our Malaysian rainforest, because of the terrain, because of the nature of the rainforest itself. It's very tight rainforest, not like India where it's a savanna. So it requires a lot of manpower, foot on the ground, boots on the ground, foot on the ground, so to say, to maintain the poaching of tiger to zero. So those are the three things that I think the three-step guides. If people ask you what do we need to do with tiger, I might be biased when answering, because I immediately say number one is breeding, because my forte is on tiger breeding. But I do really believe that if we don't have a healthy tiger population, which includes in situ and ex situ, then we don't have very much to conserve anyway. So maintaining the genetic diversity, I think, remains a very important agenda in the long run. If we manage to establish, let's say, the habitat, let's say the prey item, which is a samba deer, and protection. But in the long run, if you want the population to be stable, it needs to have a good enough number of population, and the genetic diversity need to be rich enough so that they will not have an issue. For example, now we're seeing canine distemper virus in tiger. We've seen, I think, 2 or 3 cases that was reported positive for canine distemper virus. So with all these new diseases, on top of that, I think one of the important fun fact is that for COVID-19 in wildlife, the first animal to be actually positive with COVID is tiger. A Malayan tiger in New York, although it's in New York, but it's a Malayan tiger in New York, which I think the name is Nadia. Not mistaken, it's in the Bronx Zoo. So all these diseases, CDV, COVID-19, we're not sure what it could make to the fertility of the animal, but they are positive, and although healthy, like I say, we don't know what will happen to their genetic. We don't know what will happen in the long run, and all these challenges. If the animal do not have a rich enough genetic diversity, then it will fall into all these new and novel diseases. So I do believe that breeding is a tool of resiliency of a species, as I have give out an example like the macaque and the Aedes mosquito. So we experienced this firsthand when our Sumatran rhino failed to breed, which when we were down to 3 Sumatran rhino and we were trying to breed them, they cannot breed because of reproductive pathology, because they had a tumor as well. So because of that, I think the take-home message for me when I see that is that when a mammal does not breed for quite some time, and when their reproductive system has failed, then I think we are really in a deep crisis where we cannot multiply the animal. So that is the idea again when we were thinking about doing stem cell and cloning to an extreme in Sumatran rhino. But if we do not foresee this, or if we do not equip ourselves with this technology, then I am afraid that when the time comes for the next species, for example, Malayan tiger, we will never be ready. So I always say that when people ask what is the next species to go extinct, because there will always be the next species that are going to be endangered, right? So first Sumatran rhino now gone, and then Malayan tiger maybe next I don't know, Sladang. But I think the whole takeaway from all of this is that if we don't learn something from this extinction, then we are bound to repeat it. And if we keep doing the same thing and we expect the same result, then I think we are not equipping ourselves. We are not learning anything from the extinction. So if that makes sense. Hence, we need to breed all these animals when we have the numbers, not until we, let's say, have only 10 Malayan tiger, then we that time it will be too little, too late. So now is the best time. Better late than never, but you are better earlier than late. Yes.
So speaking of all these efforts to conserve the Malayan tiger, right, Doctor? I'm interested to know how we as vet students or even just the youth in general, how can we help in playing our part in helping to save the Malayan tiger?
Right. I think youth plays a very important role in knowledge dissemination and awareness, because if you want to rely to, for example, the older generation, they are not so effective, especially with social media. So this is where you come in very important to disseminate all this awareness of tiger conservation. And it's as easy as if you're having teh tarik with your friends or with your family. If they ask you whether we should conserve the Malayan tiger, then the answer should be a resounding yes, we should, at whatever cost, because we know it's in our Malaysian emblem, in our football, it's in our identity. So as a vet, I hope, as vet students, I hope, as Malaysian, I hope we will not have second guess whether we need to conserve the Malayan tiger or not, at whatever cost, because it does come at a cost. Protecting Malayan tiger, for example, in a certain gazetted jungle, which have some economic value, for example, so it does come at a cost. Maybe we don't see it, maybe some people see it, but if they ask for your opinion, and if our opinion is a collective opinion, then I think that is where it matters for all of us to take a stand to say that we need to conserve the Malayan tiger. And I think this issue will one day come as well, like the Sumatran rhino. If the number of Malayan tiger went down to that critical number, let's say 2 digits, then the question will come again. Should we breed the Malayan tiger in captivity, or should we use assisted reproductive technology, or ART, in Malayan tiger like we did in Sumatran rhino? At that time, I do believe that it is crucial for us to take that step, to take that leap, for us to conserve the Malayan tiger and to use whatever technology that is available to us then, and not second guess whether we should do this or not. Whether, let's say, if you do ART or IVF, would the Malayan tiger be still the Malayan tiger, or would it be a tiger in a bottle? All those, I think, ethical dilemma, and whether, some people question, is it right to breed tiger in captivity? But I think for conservation's sake, like what Malaysia government is doing, we're doing conservation breeding. There is really no question whether we should breed tiger in captivity, because the ultimate goal is that after you manage to breed the tiger, we would then reintroduce the tiger back into the wild. So that is the idea of conservation breeding. It's not to keep them in cage, or like I know there's an extreme example that people usually take into their I think, so to say, library of knowledge. If people ask them about tiger breeding, they always relate to cases in some countries, for example, where they farm tiger for tiger parts because they have those economic value for some medicinal properties. So that is really not in the case for Malaysia. We do conservation breeding so that eventually, if anything happened to Malayan tiger population in the wild, we still have some backup population in captivity, and we can use this to reintroduce back tigers where we might have lost them. So in India as well, there have been successes of reintroducing tiger where there used to be tiger. For example, I'm just giving an example. For example, in Selangor, we used to have tiger in Air Hitam Puchong in 1990s. So let's say if we manage to do conservation of that area, we manage to bring Samba population back, the environment is good, can support tigers, so we can reintroduce back tiger in that place if situation permits. So again, I'm saying that these are just possibilities and these are just tools for us to use. So it's really up to us again how to use it. But having the tools when we want to, when we need to, is really a game changer. I think would really make a big difference. As for example, if you think again in hindsight, right, with the Sumatran rhino, we don't have any option left. We don't have a choice to make. We are desperate, so we don't want to be at that stage with the Malayan tiger. Now we're hoping that we can take proactive steps for us to do conservation breeding, to learn about how we can multiply the tiger population to actually bring it to a stable population. Because as of now, I think the Malayan tiger need help, and we really need to support the effort that is being done by penelitian. I hope that answers the question. What can you do, right? Yeah, so awareness, and I hope through medium like this, I think podcast is great, where you build a follower, or you build people who have knowledge and share with like-minded people, enthusiastic younger generation. Because I think at the end of the day, what I'm doing is not for myself. I am doing it probably for my daughter, probably for the future, because it is our national heritage. I think Malayan tiger is an emblem that all of us can relate to. It's a sense of pride, sense of identity, nationality in our culture. So if you have to imagine one day having to live with the with the shame of, let's say, your generation, my generation, that the shame of we not doing enough, that the Malayan tiger go extinct right in front of our, right in front of our eyes, so to say, right in front of our face, having to explain to my daughter, or your, if, yeah, I think it's unimaginable, and it's something that is very sad. I really hate to be that person, because I still remember when we did that podcast with Dr. Zainar on Sumatran Rhino, when he said, "I'm sorry, I have failed to save the Sumatran Rhino." I think that have a very deep resounding regret, and a sense of helplessness. So I think if we're given a chance, I don't want to be in that in that place. And I really don't think you guys want to be in that place as well. And I really hope we don't have to be in that place. That we are better. We know better. We have learned more enough to actually apply it in the interview, so that we don't have to see it loose, to see it gone in the blink of an eye and in front of our eyes, knowing well we can do something. So I think that is a very strong message that I want to give. Whatever medium that you can do, whether it's big, whether it's a little, I think the sum of it will make up to the conservation of the Malayan tiger. Yep.
Okay, doctor, I see. And you did say about the in the terms of reproductive technology, such as assisted reproductive technology and also IVF, like
Mhm.
they can help us in conservation efforts, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And there's another question for me. Like, are there any precedents which show that rehabilitation is possible?
There are, I think, there are more than five. I don't know the number, but I remember speaking to people from India. They say they have done at least 20 reintroduction, um, successful reintroduction of Indian tiger back in the wild. So rehabilitation, reintroduction is very possible, and they've been doing it. They say to me, no, no worries, no worries. It's quite routine in India. We do it. It's a routine procedure. So I am very hopeful that we can learn from our counterpart in India on how to do it successfully. And I think there are also effort in Thailand. Um, I think Myanmar, if not mistaken, that they want to reintroduce back tiger into the wild, where they used to have tiger there, but tiger might have been poached to extinction, or tiger might have been exterminated from the habitat. But since they have done quite good conservation measure, the place is able to sustain tiger, and they're planning to do it again. So for sure, India has been doing a lot of progressive and positive work, showing that it can be done. Other countries following suit. Malaysia as well is going to follow that. I think in the next 4 or 5 years in the pipeline, we're planning to do that. And I'm hoping we are ready for that when the time comes. Yes.
So, are there any takeaway home message from those projects that we can apply here in Malaysia?
I think the takeaway is that people and not the tiger is probably the biggest factor of whether we fail or whether we succeed at conservation of tiger. So it's not really up to the tiger. So in seeing people in India and what their government has done, I think something that we can learn is that we need to open our mind. We need to be willing to have to spend that resources, to have strong political will and support in order to successfully conserve tiger back in the wild. Because I think it's easier said than done, right? If you imagine, my village is in Terengganu, so we have some land in Ulu Sladang, which is like quite hulu place in Setiu Terengganu. It used to be full with wildlife, but now they are not so much, and you can imagine after that human is a very prolific breeder, a very good species at propagating. So those lands have been occupied. Some have been converted into agricultural land. So in our plot of land as well, we planted durians. Some people are living there. Which, if you look not long ago, let's say 30, 40 years ago, they used to have tiger roaming there, right? And human were not there. So in a way, we encroached the tiger habitat, not the other way around. So let's say now that they're not, I've not heard of tiger. We've heard of elephant and leopard, black leopard, harimau kumbang tu kan, masuk sekolah apa semua. So we've heard of that, wildlife encounters. But if you imagine one day, let's say the government said, hey, we want to introduce back tiger in Ulu Sladang. And if you are a village which were then not there, now they say, hey, you have a good forest behind. It's like bordering, right? You can imagine in Malaysia, it's almost that. Like you have protected forests, you have national park that border around villages. In a way, that is most of the situation. So if you imagine one day the government say, hey, we want to release tiger back in your backyard, so to say. It's not like releasing deer where it's more welcome because it can be a source of food to human as well. It's not like reintroducing back rhino, for example, because the worst is they come and eat your durian or they come and eat your grass. But this is releasing tiger. So it's really up to the human acceptance to having tiger in the proximity, which is, I think, something that is very difficult to fathom if we don't have enough understanding of the function of tiger as apex predator. But even if we do have that knowledge, knowing that to a certain extent our life will be implicated or may need to change because of the presence of tiger, I think is a challenge that all of us need to look into. And I think these are the point that I'm saying. The tiger conservation can either make or break, and it's up to human. It's not so much up to the tiger, because tiger is just doing the tiger's job, right? You release a tiger, for example, in one place, they cari makan, tidur, breed, but then they see human, and humans see tiger. So I think that is something that you can imagine. Maybe Adawiyah or Ashley, why don't we release 2 tigers in your backyard? It's something that you need to think twice. And this, I think, is a very challenging and interesting facade of reintroduction of tiger, because it's not your chicken, it's not your kitten, it's not your puppy. It's a cub that will, if given opportunity, will become a threat to human. So we've seen this a lot, at least with livestock, where tiger prey on cows, on cattle, on goat, on not so much goat and sheep. I think they always prey on cattle, because cattle are red in integration in oil palm estate, right? And this neighbor around some protected forest. So we've seen this, and in some places in Malaysia, they're quite accepted. They're quite acceptance to tiger. They say the tiger have been here before them, so they say it's okay. Which come to my surprise, because the tiger come and eat maybe 1 or 2 cattle a week or in 2 weeks, but they say it's okay because the tiger have been there before them. So if you imagine this kind of scenario, it takes a lot of understanding, acceptance, tolerance from the villagers to actually accept tiger. So these are the things that we need to look into if we're thinking about reintroduction of tiger. And I think if you see a model from India, it'll be quite interesting. But the key is you need to have a lot of prey source for the tigers so that they don't prey on livestock, for example, and they don't eventually prey on human, because that's the last thing that you want to happen. You want to see, right? So yeah, I do believe that human, as much as habitat, as much as prey item, prey animal abundance, of one of the few keys in the importance in determining success of tiger conservation. Yes.
First of all, I'm very happy to hear that there are people who accept that that's the tiger's habitat. And also to
Yep.
circle
Yep.
back on
Yep.
one point that you've mentioned, Doctor, you talk about the tiger's prey, right, the samba deer. So it's very
Mhm.
obvious that everything hangs in a very like intricate balance. And so if we were to look at it from a bleaker perspective, how would losing our tigers affect the natural ecosystem, and what are the imbalances that we can actually see if this happens?
Right. I think there are cases in North America, if not mistaken, where the population of grey wolf were either went extinct, or the population is very low that they cannot maintain the population of red deer in that area. So in turns, what happened is there are a population bloom of the red deer. So this red deer, they have quite sharp hoofs, right? So when there are a lot of red deer in one place, they tend to change the consistency of the land in the sense that I think it makes the land more um, porous to water, and then this in turns absorb more water content or moisture, and this eventually leads to I think whether landslide or some form of land erosion, if not an issue to the tree as well, because they have big trees, I think, in North America or Canada, some part of that. So changing the soil because of overpopulation of prey animals, because of the lack of the apex predator, upsets the ecosystem of that place. So I don't know whether we can say the same thing if it happens in Malaysia, but you do. I think you will or you should anticipate those ripple effects. So I think, for example, maybe because deer population now is very poor, one can always argue that if you take tiger away, then population of samba will be healthier, so will be better food source for human. But then again, we don't know what will happen if tiger is taken totally out of the ecosystem, because tiger does not eat or does not prey exclusively on samba deer, for example. It also eats smaller mammals like wild boar, I think kijang, kancil, and all those smaller ruminants. So we really don't know what will happen. Uh, you you can't anticipate whether it's going to be the same like North America, um, or Or if you think again, now that we've lost our Sumatran rhino, you would think something in the ecosystem would fall, will be, but yeah, I don't think to a certain extent it will go to that extreme, but you will see ripple effect, and you should expect ripple effect if population, or if, for example, something as important as the apex predator is taken out totally from the ecosystem. um, Human may able to appreciate it, may choose to appreciate it, or human can also choose otherwise. So it's really up to your interpretation, I think. But one can always agree, if something as huge as landslide or land erosion, earthquake, for example, would be of that extreme. If it's causes by apex predator, then you would want to bring them back. And really, what happened in North America was that after they bring back the population of grey wolf, they keep the population of red deer again in check, and it kind of bring back all in place. I'm not sure whether we can relate this to the flood that we're experiencing, or to land erosion, but I think you make a very good point, and I think that's a very good study if one wants to investigate, because that will have a very big impact to the conservation of the Malayan tiger, right? And we really need that. So this is where I say that no matter what your background is, if you're doing something for the Malayan tiger, then you should do it, and you should think twice whether you should do it or not. Because when I say you're doing it, you're not really doing it just for the Malayan tiger. You're doing it for the future. For example, if you manage to find that relationship that contributes to some climate change, then that is something that we would want to connect the dot, and that is something that we maybe in the dark for now, for example, but it's very valuable in the future. So all these gaps, all these holes requires a lot of research and a lot of young uh, young energy, I would say. Yep.
So, to wrap everything up, everything doctor, we would like to ask you, how do you feel about the future of our Malayan tigers, and is there anything you want to say to our listeners about your hopes for our Malayan tigers?
I have high hopes that we as Malaysian take our active role in conservation of Malayan tiger, because it's really up to us whether we want to do this or not, and we cannot be complacent, thinking that we have done enough. I think eventually what will be the downfall and failure of conservation of Malayan tiger is that we think we have done enough. There is nothing more that we can add to this. A lot of people are doing it, or other people are doing it, so I don't have to do it. But I think this is something that all of us can take responsibility and do together, no matter how small, because it all will add up to the conservation of the Malayan tiger. And finally, I think important message is for us not to give up. Although it seems daunting, it seems somewhat impossible to do it, but it takes impossible people to do impossible thing to have impossible outcomes. And I truly believe in that we all need to work hard enough and not give up. Because if we do, then I think we are at an expense of losing a very charismatic species that we will never recover again. Because extinction is not a phase; it's permanent. You can't think extinction is like today we let's say today Sumatran rhino went extinct, or Malayan tiger went extinct. You can't think that we can be able to get it again, because we will never get it again. And the same thing goes to the next species. And if we don't do anything about it, you can only think that finally the next species that is going to go extinct is the human race. the Homo sapien. Because at the rate of what we're doing or where we're going, we can't keep this very long. So I would again, if people actually listen towards the end of this, I thank you. You are a certified tiger nerd, I think, and thank you for listening to me. But we I think we really do need those tiger nerd or people that are enthusiastic and in love, passionate about what they're doing, so that we can bring about change. And I do believe that young people are the agent of change, and you can do anything that you wish and do it for the better and do it for the future. At least I have Ashley and Rabiatul listening to me tonight. So if these two people can bring another two people and it ripples, so I am more than happy to say that I have spent this 1 hours of valuable time, and thanks to you as well for doing this, so that we can share our knowledge and passion together, so that we bring the world to a better place than when you found it. I think that was Bill Nye, the science guy. Yep.
All right, doctor. So it's like a chain of events.
Yep,
Yeah.
it is.
Like we learn about it, and then we bring our friends, and our friends bring their family, learn together
Yeah.
for the benefit of us. So
Yes.
yeah. So that is all for today. Thank you very much for the insight, doctor. And it is very interesting to learn about the conservation efforts that go on every day that some of us might not even be aware of. And we hope this podcast session will be beneficial for our listeners and also open your hearts to appreciate and care more about our Malayan tigers. Understanding the impact and importance they bear on our ecosystem is crucial in helping us preserve these majestic creatures. So thank you once again, Doctor, for taking the time to talk with us today. And it was an honor to have you with us today. And also thank you,
You're
Ashley.
welcome. You're welcome. My pleasure. Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, Rabiatul. Bye.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Doctor. That was
Okay.
very interesting.
Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome.